Ireland has joined other European Union member states in agreeing approximately €5.5 billion to support the Ukrainian armed forces through the EPF. In line with the programme for government, Ireland's military support for Ukraine is directly solely towards non-lethal assistance. Our contribution now stands at approximately €122 million and helps to supply items such as medical equipment, food, personal protective equipment and fuel. Together with our European Union partners, we remain strongly committed to supporting Ukraine in defence of its independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of ongoing Russian aggression. The European Union Military Assistance Mission in support of Ukraine was established by the Foreign Affairs Council on the 17th of October 2022. The mission will provide specialised training to the Ukrainian armed forces and coordinate existing member state training activities. In February 2023, the government approved the participation of up to 30 Defence Forces personnel in UMAM Ukraine. Their primary role will be to provide training to members of the Ukrainian armed forces in the EU member states in which the training will take place. The trainers will be supplemented by a small number of staff positions in the military planning and conduct capability in Belgium and the Special Training Command in Germany.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Those agreements are, of course, not necessitated by membership of the European Union because we have an opt-out, but that, of course, doesn't mean that we can't opt in the same way that we opted out of the Temporary Protection Directive and then subsequently opted in with the approval of this Dáil. Taoiseach, in a previous parliamentary question, you told me that it's anticipated that we'll spend €121 million towards the peace facility and the military assistance mission, of which €9.9 million was spent by the end of 2022. Taoiseach, my question to you is not whether you think it's morally and strategically correct for Ireland to be involved in this. Clearly you and your government do, otherwise we wouldn't be. So I don't want to go over that. What I want to know is, how do these agreements, which are not necessitated by membership of the European Union, how do they not amount to an agreement that results in a charge upon public funds, such as requires the approval of the Dáil? I'm not saying the Dáil wouldn't approve it, but I'm asking, how do they not require the approval of the Dáil? Because they are agreements, they do result in a charge on public funds.
In the normal estimates process, they require the approval of the Dáil. In terms of the normal estimates process and the votes of departments, the vote of my department, the vote of Defence Department, the funding that gets allocated will be voted on by the Dáil. We are part of European Common Foreign Security and Defence Policy. We are part of that. We've opted into that over 20 years ago. That's one of the reasons why I think it's important that we have our national conversation on security policy and foreign policy, because a lot of people don't realise we've been part of common security and defence policy of the European Union since the beginning. Denmark recently opted in, having opted out at the beginning. So it's in that context that the temporary peace facility has evolved and developed. And I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at the Wagner groups, for example, and they're called mercenaries, call them what you like, but they're now having a much more malign impact in the world. If you look at Mali, for example, in the Sahel, the non-government actors, various militia and various mercenary forces. So if we want to protect the international rules-based order, I think there is a role for a constructive approach here from a European Union perspective.
We'll get a chance to come back. We're way over time.
Taoiseach, I accept your bona fides in that you genuinely believe that it is morally and strategically imperative for us to participate in that, and I accepted that at the outset, and that's not what I'm questioning. But what I'm questioning is our own constitutional requirements that any international agreement that imposes a cost charge on public funds be approved by the Dáil, and any participation in a war. I notice you use the word war repeatedly throughout Russia's unjustified war in Ukraine. So I appreciate that we're not providing lethal weapons. I appreciate that we're not, but we are training belligerents, albeit in demining, and we are providing non-lethal weapons. So again, I question, how does that not amount to a participation in war that requires the approval of the Dáil? Again, Taoiseach, I'm not questioning whether you believe it's strategically and morally correct that we do what we're doing. Clearly you believe that genuinely. Clearly your government does. What I'm questioning is whether the constitutional requirements at home are being complied with? Because you say that we pass the defence votes. We do, but that's not broken down by where we spend the money. There isn't a separate vote in this House on spending money in Ukraine or in the peace facility, to the best of my knowledge. But if there is, then I'm interested in that. And also the justification which you provided in the common defence policy.
I think our position, first of all, is common security and defence, which we're part of, and we voted for. Then there's Ireland's position in respect to Russia's illegal aggression against Ukraine. And Russia perpetrated a war. I take issue with your talk about we're supporting belligerence. I'll come back to that in a second. Ireland's position in respect to Russia's illegal aggression against Ukraine and our support for Ukraine's right to defend this attack on its sovereignty and its territorial integrity is in line with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. And that has been outlined in detail by the government since February last. Now, our participation in the training is in respect of demining. Well, yeah, but that's not training belligerence in that language. I mean, I met with the International Red Cross recently. One of the most appalling consequences of the kind of war that Russia is raging in Ukraine is civilian casualties from unexploded ordnances, mines and so on like that, and bombs that are that have leveled parts of Ukraine. Children can walk in playgrounds and get amputated and so on like that. So we want to train and give additional capability to Ukrainian army and military in terms of demining. And then the other area will be medical combat. Yeah, sorry, in terms of medical responses to injuries that occur in medical combat, in combat situations.
That concludes priorities. So just before we